operations that are possible using Python. So we'll start with the basic math operations, which we are all familiar with. So I'm going to take num1 equal to 10 and num2 equal to 20. Okay, so the things that we're going to see today is basically addition, and then we're going to look at subtraction, multiplication, and division first. Okay, and then we will build on from here. So addition, so as we all know, the operator that we're going to use for addition is the plus symbol. So I'm going to add these two numbers. I'm going to store this result in a variable called total. So I'm just going to put total equal to num1 plus num2. That's it. So what this means is I'm adding the two numbers stored in num1 and num2, and I'm going to store the result of this in this variable called total. So when I want to see what is the result, all I need to do is use the print statement and then print total. So if I run this, I'll get the result. Okay, and of course, instead of just printing the result, we can make it look nicer. We can say the sum of the numbers is, and then you could just print the total. Okay, so this makes it neater when you look at the output. And you could also, instead of using this statement, so let me comment this out, you can use a comment symbol, which is the hash, if you don't want to execute that line. You notice the moment I put this as a comment, I'm getting an error here. It's because it knows that there's nothing called total in my code, so it will not be able to print out anything. That's why it's giving me this. So I'm going to just put this as num1 plus num2 here. So you notice what I've done here now is I'm just adding the numbers here. Instead of using a variable to store the result, I'm directly using it in my print statement, and if I run this code, I'm still going to get back the same answer. Okay, so the only difference is that whatever value or the sum that's being generated is not being stored anywhere. So if you want to use it for further calculation in your code, you will not be able to do it. So in those cases, you will have to store it to a variable, and then you can use that variable to do the other operations. Okay, so that's for addition. Now similarly, we can also do subtraction. I'm just going to call that variable as difference. So do num1 minus num2. And next, if I want to print and see, I can say the difference is, and then I can just put diff. So if I run this code, you can see that the sum of the numbers is 30. That's my first print statement. I'm still getting that. And then the difference is -10. Why is it -10? Because our first number is smaller than the second number. So it does your operation in the same order that you give. So if you're looking only for the difference and not exactly the symbol, then you can use what is called as the ABS. It's a function in Python which will give you the absolute difference between the two values. You notice that now the negative symbol is gone, and it just gives you the actual difference between the two numbers. Okay, but for our case, I don't want the absolute value. I'm just going to look at the actual difference. Okay, the third operator is excuse me, multiplication. So I'm going to do PRD, short for product. I'm just going to keep it as PRD. Okay, so you can give product or any other meaningful name that you want. So PRD equal to, I want to multiply the two numbers. Multiplication operator is the star symbol. So num1 times num2. Now num1 times num2 will be 10 times 20, which is 200. So let's try to print it out. Print the product is, okay. So let's run this code. We should get 3 outputs now. Line number 7 is an output, line number 10 is an output, and line number 13 is an output. Okay. there. So sum, difference, product. Okay, now let's go on to division. So I'll call it div. Div equal to num1 over num2. Then let's try to print this out and see what output we get. Okay, so I've given print the result of division is div, and div is num1 over num2, 10 over 20, and that'll be 1/2 or 0.5. So we've got that expected result here, 0.5. Let's run this code again with a bigger number this time. So it's going to take 100 for num1 and num2 is 20. Okay, so you notice in division, even though it's fully divisible, it's giving us a float value. So the first point here is that division returns a float value. Okay, so the result of a division is a float value. Okay, that's why you see the 5.0 here. Now if you look at numbers which are not divisible, right, for example numbers which will give me a reminder, so let's take 10 and maybe 3. Okay, so 10 divided by 3 should give me 3 as the quotient, correct? So let's look at the answer. So you notice when we do division, it's giving me such a big floating point value, and usually we will only need to round it to the second decimal value or the third decimal value. So in those cases you have this function called as round, so you can round your answer. If I just use round like that, you notice what happens to the answer. It gives me without any decimal points, just the integer part of it. Okay, but we want it with some decimal values, so I'm going to take 2 decimal points. So this comma 2 represents how many decimal points I want in my answer. So if I give 2, it'll give me 2 decimal points. I'll change it to 3, and then let's run the code, and you get 3 decimal points. Okay, but for now I'm going to remove this round operation. I don't need that, and I'm just going to run this so we can see our full output here. So now if I want to get only the quotient of my answer, then I can use this operator. I'll call it as div1 for the variable name, or maybe I should call it as quotient. And then I can use double slash. So this one, double slash, is what I've used here. This double slash is going to give me the quotient of the division. So let's print all right, let's run this code. So you notice it says quotient is 3. So the division, which was giving us floating point values, when you add make double slash as your operator, you're going to get your quotient. So the other operator which you can use is called as the modulo operator, which can give you the remainder of a division. Okay, so num1 percentage num2. So of course Python is case sensitive, so if you give a capital R, you have to maintain that. I just want to use all smaller case, so I'm just changing that. Okay, so let's print this out. Print okay, let's run this code. So what is the remainder that we should get? 10 divided by 3, quotient will be 3 and remainder will be 1. So let's look at the answer. There it is. Remainder is 1. So you have division, which gives you the complete decimal value, and then you have the double slash, which gives you the quotient of a division, and you have the percentage symbol or the modulo operator, which gives you the remainder of a division. Okay, so these are all the operations relating to division. Then one last operator that I would like to talk to you about is exponents. Okay, how do we get exponents working here? I can say exponent equal to num1 star star 2. What am I trying to do here? It is either you can call it as exponents or to the power of. Okay, so num1 to the power of 2. So num1 is 10. So in this line, what I'm trying to do is basically 10 to the power of 2. That's what this particular operation is doing, double star. Okay, so num to the power of 2, the answer should be 100. So let's see the result. So print to the power is, and then let's try to print out this answer. See, to the power is 100. So that means 10 to the power of 2 is 100. We can test this out with number 2, and then it's 3, right? So 3 to the power of 2 is then going to be 9. There. And you can also do it like this, num1 to the power of num2. That's also possible. So in this case, num1 is 10, num2 is 3, so 10 to the power of 3 should give us 1000. There. So these are the various operations, mathematical operations that can be used for all of our coding purposes relating to numerical values. Okay, so all these operations are mainly for numerical values. However, addition and some multiplication can be used with the symbols can be used with strings also. So I'll just show you one example for the string. Let's say I want to give it as str1 equal to, let's say, hello, and then str2 equal to word. Okay, so the operator that we learned just now, the addition operator. So let's see what happens if we use that here. So print result of using plus operator for strings. Okay, so this is what I want to do, and then I'm gonna add up str1 plus str2. So now if I run this code, you can see here that result of using plus operator for strings, hello world. So let's make it a bit clearer to see. Okay, that's what you see. Result of using, let me run this code again. Result of using plus operator for strings. So I have two strings, hello and world. When I use the plus operator, it just gets pasted together here. Okay, so whenever you use addition symbol for strings, the values will be pasted next to each other. There will not be a proper addition operation happening. It's more like a pasting operation. And then the next one is when you use multiplication, right? So multiplication you can use only, you cannot use between two strings. Okay, result of using star with strings. So when I do str1 times str2, let's see what happens. what will happen if you try to multiply two strings? See, everything up to that point works, and that particular point we get an error which says type error. Can't multiply sequence by non-integer, non-int of type str. That means it says you can't multiply two strings. You can only multiply values which are integers. So the only other way that we can do this is, instead of you multiplying two strings, I can still do, for example, num2 is a integer, num2 times string2. Let's run this and see what happens. We see that there's no error this time. And the result of using multiplication with strings. What is the result of using multiplication with strings? So we see that here world, world, world. So the world comes from our string 2. Okay, we see that we have done string 2 times num2. So what is num2? Num2 is basically number 3. So we are multiplying 3 with world, and then we get world printed 3 times. So that's what happens when you multiply an integer with a string. It basically pastes the string that many number of times. So if, let's say, I give let's take a new value. For example, I want to give 3 times, and I want to multiply the string hooray. Okay, so let's see what happens. You notice hooray, 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 3 times it gets printed because I'm using the integer 3 to multiply it with the string hooray. So these are the two places where you can use these two operators for strings. The rest of the operators you will not be able to use with strings. And so that's about it for all the operations that are possible. And in the next video I'll show you how you can use operations which are used for comparison purposes, like greater than, lesser than, and also about logical operators like and or and not.